Please welcome Colleen Farrelly, who is a lead data scientist at Staticlysm, whose expertise spans topological data analysis, spatiotemporal analytics, network science, and predictive analytics. Her book, The Shape of Data, is forthcoming and covers many methods in data science from a geometric perspective.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here. That changed. Okay, I think I see where I can share everything. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Awesome. So today we're going to look at generative AI and how to engineer good prompts. I'll start with a little overview of who I am. I am a data science lead. I'm the author of The Shape of Data, which is coming out later this year. I'm also an AI artist and a creative in Miami. My path to data science has not been linear, and that's okay. A lot of us take nonlinear paths into this field. So I started out as a really enthusiastic kid who was told I was dumb and bad at school quite often. And outside of school, I kind of let my creative juices flow and read a lot. And I was this kind of unconventional girl doing the chemistry experiments and trying to engineer solutions to problems that my friends and I would find. I had a really horrible experience starting university. I don't come from the most conventional background, and I was accused of plagiarism because people like me could not write an essay like the one that I wrote for my first semester English class. And I tried to drop out of university after that experience. And fortunately, my German professor would not sign the paper that I had to have signed to drop out. And so I stayed. I ended up in an MD PhD program. I figured that medicine was a good way to use science without having to actually be in science. However, my first semester of medical school, my school got a huge grant to start an AI program. And I went to the first talk when new professors came to the university, and I found myself hooked on AI. So I dropped out of my program and entered the yet to be started AI program. I was a guinea pig for most of our machine learning and AI classes as the program was being developed. And I've spent more than 10 years now in research and development and AI for social good. There may be a PhD in the future. I'm open to it. Just kind of looking at a lot of different possibilities in life right now. But I'm still not the most conventional data scientist, and apparently I still don't fit some stereotypes. When I went to speak at my last conference, I got detained by campus security who did not think I looked like somebody speaking at a tech conference. So there's still definitely work to be done for women in data science and people with different backgrounds in data science. But there is room for us in the field, and we can create some really cool things by thinking differently. So what is generative AI? There's so many buzzwords and articles these days about ChatGPT and GPT-4, which came out yesterday, and this new competitor to GPT-4 that Google just announced yesterday. So there's a lot of news going on, but it's hard to know exactly what it is if you don't already know what it is. So generative AI uses algorithms to generate images, text samples, videos, audio content, and it's guided by both the training sample and the user specifications. We'll get into some of the specifics later on in the talk, but essentially you have a training sample that's used to train the model that underlies the API, and then you have user specifications that are going to do something to your pre-trained model to evolve what's already there into what you want. There are a lot of use cases. So public health campaigns are often tricky. If we think of COVID and the HIV epidemic, things were very different in how public health was done. So in 2006, 2007, I was involved with AIDS education and initiatives in South Africa. When we wanted to generate content for public health campaigns, we had to create everything from scratch. We had to go through translators to translate it into the different languages that exist in the country. There are 7 official languages. So we had to go through translators to translate everything to make sure that we could reach everyone that we needed to reach. We had to come up with all of the skits ourselves, and we ran into a lot of different issues with how to do that and how to do that in different contexts. We had to do all of this by hand. All of this was trial and error. And it took a very, very long time to be able to get something usable. However, with COVID, we can generate an image that shows a person wearing a mask and plop in the message of help stop COVID, wear a mask, or some other campaign slogan. And we can even use AI to score how effective that might be within the subpopulations that we want to reach. And that's so much easier than how things have been done in the past. And this presents a great opportunity in areas where some of these resources might not exist or might be very expensive to do in a public health campaign. Using generative AI can speed things up and save a lot of money and time creating these public health campaigns. Another use case is chatbots. So I'm guessing probably most people are familiar with chatbots already. A few years ago, I was working with Genzabar, and we created an educational chatbot for universities to automate student support. A lot of questions that students call in about or use live chat with an agent involve the same things. They might be locked out of their account. They might have forgotten their password. They may need to know where the link is to register for classes. A lot of the things that you would find in the old FAQ documents of these frequent questions that come up. However, with the chatbot, students can get support for multiple problems at the same time by interacting with this chatbot. However, chatbots and generative AI in general bring up a lot of ethical considerations. So within higher education, you really need to capture certain things. So if a student reports a crime or a student is asking for help cheating on something, those are all things that need to be flagged and somebody needs to be alerted. Here in the US, unfortunately, active shooter situations happen, and you need to also be able to link something like that to 911. So it's not as easy as just build an application on top of ChatGPT and let ChatGPT handle everything. There are constraints on what comes out of ChatGPT. There are things that need to be flagged and escalated. Another thing that we ran into was having to escalate situations. So if the chatbot could not answer the question, the last thing you really want to do with somebody in need is loop them through this process of a chatbot that does not understand what they're saying and can't refer them to a human. So that's really important with generative AI. There needs to be a human in the loop if the product is being released into the wild. They'll do a great job 70% of the time, 80% of the time, even maybe 90% of the time. But when they fail, a human needs to be in the loop. Another use case is generating beta content. Say you want to create a new cartoon targeting males from 4 to 9 who watch a lot of science fiction. We can generate lots of potential content like what you see on the left. You know, maybe we have 100 images or 500 images. From there, content creators can look through the set of images that are generated and choose the most promising characters and scenes to be able to do a pilot. This saves a lot of time for illustrators and content creators if they can cast a really wide net, narrow it down themselves, and get feedback from the market before they actually go and draw something like this, or before they actually write an article, or before they actually generate the video sequence. This allows for a lot more testing, a lot more quickly than what's possible if the artists have to create all of these different potential contents to beta test. So this is a really interesting area. It's really, really new. I think it really just took off last November with ChatGPT, but this concept has been around for a bit. There are many other use cases. So here in the US, Tomb Raider was a big video game for a long time, and AI can be used to generate these 3D worlds for video games. It can be used in public policy content generation. So perhaps there's new policies in place that need to be disseminated across an entire population. Imagine if you could just generate a bunch of these, use a translator, and be able to get the message out in different forms. So you may have problems with literacy in a certain area of the country, and having a voice generator allows you to read the text in whatever language you're working with and have people be able to listen to it on audio rather than have to be able to read it. Or you might want to generate images so that you can show somebody like wearing a mask. Blog content is another one. I would not recommend putting something from ChatGPT into a blog. There's not fact checking as part of that, but it's good for a starter. As long as there's a human in the loop that's checking facts, checking figures, getting a list of references together, it can be a good way to get things started. Educational video generation is another potential use case. Video generation is fairly early on with generative AI, but at the pace that this field is going, my guess is that this is probably going to be something that's possible in the next several years, which can help disseminate educational material to areas that might not have as much access as cities. There are virtual therapist apps, there are personal assistant bots, and many, many more. I believe Microsoft is trying to integrate this technology on desktops. So sometime this year, we'll be seeing how you can get assistance and things that we do every day on a computer. Given the pace of this field, I have no idea where this is going to be in 5 years or 10 years because it's developing so fast. But I think this is really going to change how a lot of things are done. So let's dive into a little bit of how these algorithms work. It's important to understand the algorithms themselves rather than just the APIs, because it gives us some insight into what's actually happening when we provide these technologies with a queue. Without good prompts, it's a lot of junk, and that can be problematic. So let's look at GPT first. GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer 3. Now it's 4, which I believe you have to sign up for access to it. Everything was crashed when I tried this morning, so we'll probably just go through the theory here. So this is a decoder-only transformer network, so it's decoding what goes into the algorithm, and it gives a sequence-to-sequence decoder with long-range memory. So you're going to be evolving things over time with the training set and this decoder network. And this is already starting to blur the lines between human composition and AI. I actually did a pilot study to see if human editors could distinguish between poems that I had written and poems generated by GPT-3 based on learning from my own poems. So I gave it a whole bunch of my own haiku, and I had the computer generate the rest of them. And human editors, it was about 50-50 on the poems. Some, they were able to tell, okay. A lot of them, there was a lot of discussion and a lot of misclassification on the human side. So this is already out there, and this is already quite good. It was about 10% of the poems that I generated out of there that stood toe-to-toe with human compositions. So the one on the top is mine, and the one on the bottom is what AI came up with. It's getting some human context. It's getting the structure of the poems. I've only tried this in English and German. I'm not sure how accurately it's going to understand something like a ghazal or something that's written in Arabic. But it's probably worth playing with at this point because the technology seems to be getting close to where humans are with the composition. One of the cool tools these days is this DALL-E algorithm, which is, again, part of OpenAI. This takes in text prompts and ends up generating an image. So some of the things that it can do, it can just use text and generate images. Basically, you're training on this huge set of images, and then you have this modification piece based on the text input. So one of the cool things that you can do is insert new features or styles into this image, into a single image that you give it along with the prompt, or you can modify kind of what's already there and combine pieces that might not exist together within the training data set, like an underwater cafe or something like that, or this dog playing the trumpet. But based on the different pieces of images that exist and this text example that you give it, it can combine those elements. So basically you have your images encoded, you have something to interpret and encode your text, and then based on the repository and the text going in, you have this network that's evolving the image based on that. So you have this language image pre-training, you have this prior model that's built off of the existing repository, and this decoder diffusion model, which is modifying the prior model based on the language input to get your output. Stable diffusion is another text-to-image technology used to generate all of the images on the right, and it's based on latent diffusion models coupled to input text. So you have the translation of text cues, which is similar to DALL-E. You have something that's able to parse out and embed the text for context. And then you have Markov chains wandering around the latent space. So you're basically kind of you have this exploration step to look through the space of images that exist and where they are within the model space. And then you have a denoising and renoising of images. So you're adding things randomly, subtracting things randomly from the pixels, and leveraging in-painting techniques to fill in these gaps. So you can start with an image, kind of wander around a little bit of similar images, add and subtract a bit from the image, and then fill in whatever the model wasn't able to find, and you get a new image out of it, which I think is pretty cool. However, all of this is based on prompt engineering. Without having good control over the algorithm, it can do some really weird things, and you can get junk images out or really stunning images that are nothing like what you wanted to generate. So this is a new field of engineering that's unique to generative AI. It leverages a knowledge of the technical architecture. So if you understand how these algorithms are working, you have more control over what they're doing. And you can find these good combinations of elements to coax the system into a desired output. It takes a lot of work. For some of the more complicated images that I've done, I've had to tweak the prompts with 10, 20 30 different tweaks to be able to get exactly what I want out of the algorithm. And that's pretty common. Once you have a set of good prompts, it's easy to combine them to get new types of images. And there's a growing need for prompt engineers in industry. There are a few positions already starting in California that are asking for prompt engineers. And as generative AI becomes more common, I think there's going to be a lot of new career opportunities within data science, particularly gaming systems, content generation, modification of language models for specific fields like the medical field or other areas of biology, probably legal at some point. And I think this is going to open up doors in data science for those of us who are a little bit more of the creative persuasion and into like creative writing and art. This seems to be a really great little niche of data science that's developing right now. However, we need more representation in this field. So there are a lot of languages that have no models or have really bad models. So I tried using ChatGPT with Lingala, and there are not very many samples that it was trained on. And it definitely does not have some of the restraints that are supposed to be there for what kind of content it can generate. From looking around, Hausa is another one. There are thousands of languages that do not have great support in the technologies that exist. And that means that it's harder to use these technologies. So there's really a need to create generative AI tools that can handle languages that are really common in the world, but currently not supported much with the current technologies. In addition, there's a lot of cultural contexts that are missing. So I've been trying for a really long time to get one of the algorithms I like using to be able to accurately depict a burqa. And that can be really important with public health interventions or policy or any other type of dissemination to be able to create an accurate picture of what a woman looks like in the culture where I'm working. It's also not great with subgroup contexts. So depending on the group that you're working with, some of these technologies might fail. One thing that I've noticed a lot with some of the language models is not having the context with different dialects of English. So it works pretty well with most of the American dialects, fairly well with some of the British dialects, but some of the Caribbean English, Nigerian English, English in South Africa, a lot of the context is missing. And it will completely fail if it doesn't have that word tagged with one of the pictures that it was trained on. And that's something that I think is a huge opportunity within the multicultural context of being able to get these pieces together to be able to work in local areas. Having a text generation that can understand some of the dialects that are spoken in Nigeria or in South Africa, I think would be really great. It would be really useful for me if some of those words were in these models. Another huge problem right now is the lack of worldwide access to some tools. So OpenAI is not available everywhere, and I've had a lot of people reach out about not being able to access those tools. There are other tools available that are worldwide, but I think this is something that we need to be really cognizant of, and one of the reasons why there needs to be more people going into generative AI around the world. If this ends up transforming a lot of data science and a lot of technology in general, and only part of the world is able to access these technologies and learn on them, that closes the door to representation and even being able to create accurate tools for entire regions of the world. OpenAI isn't available for most of the countries near me in the Caribbean. And that essentially blocks out entire populations from being able to join in this field of AI. So there are a lot of resources out there. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm on LinkedIn a lot, and I tend to respond fairly quickly. There's also a good tutorial on Stable Diffusion here, the link to OpenAI if you're able to use it in your country, a few videos with generative AI. Midjourney is a new image generation platform. This one right here, this Palm API and Maker Suite, it's not out yet, but this is an article talking about what Google is coming out with, which hopefully will be something that is available for everyone around the world. That would be really helpful. And then this last one is Math GPT, which we'll go through because a lot of the GPT related things have crashed since the announcement yesterday of GPT-4. But one of the uses so far has been to create a mathematics version of GPT that can answer math questions. So I'm going to take you through some speech generation, some text generation, image generation, and then hopefully at some point OpenAI won't be crashed and Google's Palm API will be out, and you can play around with that when there's access. So let's get out of here, and we'll start with this tool. So I found one that can create voices based on Egyptian Arabic. So I'm not sure which voices are going to work. It can be kind of touchy on the free version, but let's see what it can come up with. I have some examples from Asan that I'll put in here. Looks like that voice is not available right now. Let's see if this works. This always happens when you're going to demo something. Okay, I guess we will not be doing this today because those are all of the voices that you can get. But sometimes this does work. This site in general has a lot of different languages that are supported and different dialects from different parts of the world. You can go, it's play.ht, and that's a free site that you can use. So you might be able to play a sample from here. Okay, so it seems like these are working. So here are the three voices. So those are three voices that are generated by AI. If anyone on the call wants to chime in about how accurate or not accurate these are, or how understandable they are, that would be great.
Awesome. I think we didn't hear the sound,
Okay.
but it could be because when you're sharing the screen, you didn't click on share sound.
Okay, that might be it. If I
But it's
send you
okay.
this link,
Yes, you can check
okay.
the link.
Let me see how I do this. Chat. Here we go. I'll send this to everyone in here, and if you want to play around with it a little bit and let me know if it's accurate or not.
Oh, great.
If you want to maybe play it, I think your audio might be able to work. I can stop sharing. if you want.
Okay, I'll try this out.
Okay. It's the green buttons with the 3 different names that seems to be working right now. That's one of the annoying things. Sometimes the demos break. So if you scroll down,
كل فلة وليها كيال.
Yeah, well, it's good. Should we try another example or?
sure.
Okay. Dia, do you have another statement, Arabic Egyptian statement? Okay, I guess he isn't here. Yeah. Okay.
Modern
He
Standard
says,
Arabic.
yeah.
And that's one of the things that I've run into when trying to use these outside of English, French, and Spanish. A lot of times something will be labeled as regional, but it won't actually be that, or it won't be very accurate, especially with some of the translators. And that's a big problem in the field.
Yeah.
It looks like this one may have that problem. But there may be some other text-to-speech that will work with Egyptian Arabic.
Yes.
We can move on and look at this Math GPT, because this is pretty cool. You can solve math problems and they'll actually show you the code behind this. So let's try, what is the derivative of 4x plus 2? See if it can do this. The derivative is 4. And then here we have our Python of how you would solve this. I think this is Python. Looks like Python. So it gives you a little explanation of this too. Take the derivative, rate of change of the function with respect to its independent variable. In this case, the independent variable is x. Derivative of 4, which is the result of the calculation. So this is one of the kind of cool applications, being able to actually get math help and be able to solve some of these things and see the code behind it. Does anyone have a math problem that they want it to solve? If anyone wants to put it in the chat, I can copy it from there. Okay, we have an example here. Let's paste this in. Okay. Okay, so square root of 5 divided by 2 plus 1.5. And we see our Python again. And it knows the quadratic formula. And looks like it plugs them in there. trying to do this in my head, but I think I need pencil and paper. Definitely not as fast as this was. Any other examples? Any harder examples that you've encountered? Otherwise, I can share one that I thought was an interesting example.
Okay, you could share your example.
Okay. So we'll see. The last time I used this, it was an interesting answer. So Ricci curvature actually has a formula for this, which is not that. It should involve the radius, but we can see here, when you get into more complicated math, it's hard to get the correct answer out of this. So that's another example of where these things can fail, and something to be aware of when you're using these applications or building off of one of these tools. If it's not in the training data, it's not going to be able to handle it when somebody asks the technology to figure something out. This one was not trained to do these things. It was more physics and calculus. But if you go out of the bounds of what something was meant for, you can get wrong answers or you can get incomplete answers. And that's something to be really aware of, both when you're building applications off of something that exists, or selecting training data if you're trying to build one of these yourself, or to put in with prompt engineering to be aware that it may not have a context, especially if you can't see the training data or the algorithm that's being used explicitly, which is the case for a lot of these tools. The code is hidden, the training data is hidden, and sometimes weird things can happen. Any other questions on that or things that you want to try? Otherwise, we can move on to some of the image generation. I guess not. So we can go to Night Cafe. So this is a really handy image generation tool. It has stable diffusion, which we talked about. It has Dolly 2, which we talked about, as well as some of these other styles, this coherent, this artistic, and then a style transfer where you can actually turn something that you draw or a photograph into the style of particular artists. So the one that I usually use is this one because they have a free option, so you can generate images without having to keep paying to generate them. And there are advanced options that you can use and basic options. So with the basic option, you have your text prompt and you have all of these different styles that you can use. This one is the default, but you can do pictures of people, you can make comic books, you can do more of the artistic type stuff. You can even generate faces of people. There are a few other sites that let you generate fake people's photographs, which is really helpful if you need to have something for a public health campaign or something else that you're designing, and you don't want to use a real image or there are restrictions with copyrights. You can use something from here. And then basically you have this free option and this not free option. On the advanced modes, you can actually play with the underlying algorithm or give it an image. So you can give it something to kind of guide how it's evolving the picture. essentially adding something to the training data set, you can have different types of images, different like a widescreen or a landscape type orientation. You can play around with the prompt weight. So how much evolution is going on behind the scenes from the training data based on the text input that you created. You can also look at these different diffusion models, which are behind the scenes, but they have updates to how the stable diffusion is done. So you can play around with how those are done. You can tell the algorithm if you want something simpler, something faster with the clip guidance of how it's pulling out what it knows already. And you have different sampling methods that you can use for where you're looking for these things and how you're putting all of this together within the algorithm. So this platform actually gives you a lot of control over it. And you can have some control over the resolution that you get out of this as well, and the runtime of how long you want your algorithm to be running. So let's just use something simple. Does somebody want to describe an image that they want to create? If you want to just put it in the chat, and then we can work on some prompt engineering and different ways that you can put this together and how they might actually create the image. Okay, let's see how this works. So let's just try that description and see how it works. And then we can work on different ways of prompt engineering this to get it closer to what you want. So we'll just run this. So it doesn't quite have the clown, but it does have a bit of a Mickey Mouse there. So let's take what we have. So something photorealistic Mickey Mouse. Clown costume. Let's try photorealistic Mickey Mouse and clown costume and see if that gives us this clown outfit. Looks like we still don't have him in the clown outfit. Let's see what else we can try. Clown clothes, maybe clown makeup. Let's see if that works. Well, that's a little bit better. It doesn't have the greatest picture of Mickey, but it looks like we now have the clown outfit there. Any suggestions of how we could tweak the prompt a little bit more? Oh, it looks like there's one in here. Yeah, kind of funny. Feel free to drop any ideas in the chat of what you think we might want to add to get the makeup part of that. Maybe clown hat. Let's add clown hat. And maybe clown nose. Clown nose, clown hat. in general, if you have related prompts separated by the commas, it'll generally get the idea a little bit more. So a little bit of a clown outfit. It doesn't look like it got the clown nose or the clown hat going on there. So that's something that we would have to keep playing around with to see what might be able to get the makeup on there. It may be that, yeah, add more descriptive content. So let's try that and see if we can get something. Try red nose. And we'll try funny hat. Maybe circus clothes. It may know circus better than clown. Let's try that and see if we get anything better. Okay, that's a little bit better. So we definitely have the outfit. We have a bit of a funny hat. We don't have the makeup in there, but we do have something that's looking more clown-like. Okay, let's try red spherical nose. We can modify that a little bit more and see if we can get this working. Spherical red nose. Okay, we'll save that. Try this again. That didn't work so well. But it's something that you can play around with when you're generating your own images. And that's something, it can take a while to get specific images that you want. But these tools in general, if you play around with them enough, you get better at figuring out how to generate what you want. And it can take a lot of practice. A lot of these tools are kind of finicky, especially with training data sets. My guess is here, there's probably not images of Mickey Mouse dressed up like a clown. And it's probably not getting that context because there's nothing to really draw on there to evolve. So that's something that I've noticed. If you juxtapose images that don't typically go together, generally it'll struggle. But if you're generating something that's likely to exist in the training data set or combinations of things that are likely to exist, it can be easier to generate that type of content. Any questions about this or questions about what you can use? Happy to answer anything that anyone has. Yes, generative AI has a lot of uses for social good. So health campaigns are one that I've been exploring of how to be able to use these to really generate what's needed in areas where things might not be as accessible. So during the Ebola outbreak in DR Congo, a lot of the areas impacted were fairly rural with low levels of literacy and a lot of mistrust. Being able to generate images would have been very helpful at that point of time. Being able to have something that's culturally relevant and in the languages spoken would have been really helpful to be able to distribute locally rather than have somebody from the outside coming in and saying this and that and everything. Education is another one, being able to create educational content. So if you're creating a lesson plan, having some of the visuals generated with image generation maybe being able to generate some of the content with text generation. Definitely fact checked whatever you're doing with that, because it probably isn't going to be accurate. But those uses come to mind. Being able to generate content that's culturally relevant. So a lot of content kind of skews towards US demographics and specific groups in the US. So being able to generate more artistic content and more social media content that has diversity represented is another good social good use for this type of technology, being able to get more content out there with fewer creators that are in that space. Looks like we have more questions. Artists as well. So this is fairly controversial in the art space. There was an artist who got banned from Reddit for Artists forum because they thought that he had used generative AI in his work, which did not turn out to be the case. But this has been getting a lot of press of whether this should be used, whether this shouldn't be used. I think it's a great way to generate content. There's definitely still a huge need for sculptures and paintings and all of these pretty works that can communicate ideas through traditional forms of art. But in digital art, yeah, this is definitely becoming a bigger thing, and more people are starting to see the usefulness, especially like in advertising, being able to generate a lot of this content that resonates with the demographic groups that are being targeted. It has a lot of potential for use there. Again, there should be humans looking at this and probably creating any commercial or campaign around the images that are generated, but it can be a huge time saver for artists in multimedia or artists in sculpture or other mediums. This can be a good way to interact with followers, with potential followers, to see what type of artwork resonates most with them. So if you're going to spend a lot of time on a sculpture, you probably want a good reception for your sculpture, and being able to generate ideas with generative AI allows you to kind of test that out without actually spending a lot of your time making something that might be a flop. Same with creative writing. If people don't respond to some of this stuff coming out, or you're getting new ideas that keep coming out of AI that might be a good avenue for a next short story. Those are all ways that AI can help human creators be able to hone what they're doing and resonate with wider audiences. Any other questions or comments? I think we're done a little bit early then. Thank you so much for having me, and hopefully this tutorial helped with getting started with a lot of these different tools that are out there. Definitely play around if you're interested. This is going to be a big part of data science in the future.
Thanks very much, Colleen. This was really fantastic.